Brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, scholars, teachers and trainers, professors and professionals, listeners and learners from the field of science, religion, arts, commerce and engineering, the most honorable President Pensional Modi ji, respected ministers and doctors, honorable advocates, advisors, administrators and advisors, reverend fathers and mothers, affectionate sons and daughters. I, Dr. Rakesh from USA, heartily cordially welcome all of you. It is very nice time, nice place. You are listening the truth, science to spirituality, language to literature. Dear friends, earlier you have heard and listened. Our soul, which is always shackled by anger, avariciousness, falsity, sensual pleasure, negativities, how we can get rid, how our soul can get rid from the falsification, from the false word. When a person feels that they got what they deserve because that's what they earned, that's pride. The champion, when he wins the gold, wears it with great pride. He doesn't say, I don't deserve it. Athletes spend 15 years training for 15 seconds of performance. Athletes spend 15 years training for 15 seconds of performance. They never say, I don't deserve it. But they have the humility to give credit to those behind the scene. Could he have ever won the gold without a good coach, mentor? Never. He does not have the vanity to take the credit. However, the best coach and the support of the family would not get the medal without the effort of the athletes. Pride leads to self-confidence, whereas conceit leads to arrogance. There is a fine line dividing and conceit, and the moment you cross it, you lose strength. Humility is respect for humanity. In India, there is a traditional greeting called Namaste. It is by folding both hands together, bowing your head slightly and saying Namaste. It means the divinity in me salutes the divinity in you. It is a sign of humility. Self-respect does not mean that I deserve more respect than others. Basic courtesy and manners are also a part of respect and dignity. Besides learning and training, many years ago at Chicago railway station, senior officials and reporters were awaiting the arrival of a Nobel Prize winner. As the big man rode off the rail, cameras were flashing furiously. City officials were stretching to shake hands and tell him how honored they were to meet him. Having thanked them, he excused himself for a moment, walked briskly through the crowd, and picked up the bags of an elderly woman who was struggling. He escorted her, carrying her bags to the bus, and wished her a safe journey. He then came back to the crowd and said, Sorry to have kept you waiting." The man was the world famous Dr. Albert Schweitzer. Having seen this, a member of the reception committee, and to one of the reporters, "That's the first time I ever saw a sermon working. True humility is invisible and helps build others. Humility either comes naturally or it looks contrite. The tree bends when it bears a sign of maturity. Humility is a sign of maturity. Take successes in stride. Have a bigger heart instead of a swollen head. Humility, however, does not mean self-demeaning behavior that could amount to belittling oneself or considering oneself unworthy. Humility is nothing else but plain, simple, decent, down-to-earth behavior. Why is humility important? People who let success to their heads are resented. Leaders should look for cooperation and goodwill rather than the acknowledgement of their superiority. A good leader does not feel the need to flaunt his authority. He is not trying to impress anyone. He doesn't suffer from insecurities or complexes. Good leaders are not arrogant. Flaunting authority and displaying arrogance distances the leader from his team and his followers. Leaders who take pride in their work are the most humble about their achievements. Humility does not mean that people think less of themselves. It only means that they think of themselves less. Difference between leadership and management. Both management and leadership can be learned. These both can be learned. Good leadership cannot be learned without trials. A manager may or may not be a good leader. Some of the world's greatest leaders, such as Churchill, Alexander the Great, and Henry Ford, did not go through any formal leadership or management programs. Honorable living requires leadership qualities regardless of our position or profession in life. Dear friends, winners don't do the different things, they do the things differently. The manager administered. The manager administers. The leader innovates. The manager maintains. The leader develops. The manager relies on systems. The leader relies on people. The manager counts on controls. The leader counts on trust. The manager does things right. The leader does the right thing. On a fine evaluation, observation between management and leadership, I don't think the demonstration is as clear as defined above. I don't think the demonstration is as clear as defined earlier. One can have and needs elements of both. A good leader commands highest respect because he is trustworthy, dependable, and gives strength and courage to those around him. The success of a leader is determined not by how much wealth he accumulates, but how many hearts he continues to live in after he is gone. After he is gone. Leadership is a combination, not a key. It cannot open with a single number. You must have the right combination of numbers to be able to open it. Similarly, one quality is not enough to make a leader. A leader must have the right balance and combination of vision, values, competence, courage, and character. One without the other will not work. A good leader is both a coach and a cheerleader. Very often gets promoted to become a supervisor. The functions of a supervisor and a worker are quite different. A person who is a good worker may not necessarily be a good supervisor. And if that happens, then the company has lost on two accounts. They have lost a good worker and they now have a bad supervisor. Leadership principles seem simple once they are revealed. Just like a magician bedazzles his audience with his tricks, but once he tells them how they are done, it all seems really obvious. Successful people are not just go-getters, but go-givers. They give their best. And because they give their best, they get the best from others. They realize life a boomerang. They realize life is a boomerang. The more they give, the more comes back. Leaders are not born leaders. Leadership qualities can be acquired. Leadership essential in every sphere of life. A headless institution does not work. Every family, community, country needs a leader. As responsible adults, we are called upon to assume leadership roles in our day-to-day lives, directly or indirectly, actively or passively. We all influence someone, somewhere, in some manner, shape or form, for the better or worse. Followers have the responsibility to expect high standards from their leaders, strong commitment to principled action and service is the responsibility of every person. The willingness to address fundamental issues and then make every effort to live by the answers is what makes a great leader great. If we are not, then we are the problem. Corruption, corrupt exploiters, without insatiable greed, are forever looking for new opportunities to destroy society for their personal gain. When worthy people do not come forward to take of leadership, an ugly breed of self-serving parasites fills the void. People with leadership skills sometimes refuse public service and leadership roles because they are content with their status and wealth. In this way, they don't enforce a status quo but bring degradation. They put their conscience into deep sleep. Their indifference encourages cynicism in those around them. This laid-back attitude, however, serves as an opportunity for arrogant and selfish pseudo-leaders to fill the vacuum. Honorable living and politics. People come to me and say, I keep to myself, I want to have nothing to do with politics. I don't want to be involved. How absurd. We are already involved by not being involved. The air we breathe, the water we drink, the food we eat, the education our kids get, the taxes we pay, the medicine we take, our very existence is the result of politics. How then can we not be involved? We are already involved, either by choice or by default. Life is not a spectator sport. And when we fail to get involved, we also lose the right to criticize. A leadership creed, I believe in the supreme worth of the individual and in his right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I believe that every right implies a responsibility, every opportunity, an obligation, every possession, a duty. I believe that the law was made for man and not man for the law. That government is the servant of the people and not their master. I believe in the dignity of labor, whether with head or hand. That the world owes to a man, that the world owes no man a living, but that it owes every man an opportunity to make a living. I believe that LWHES. Thrift is essential to well-ordered living, and the economy is a prime requisite of a sound financial structures, whether in government, business or personal affairs. I believe that truth and justice are fundamental to an enduring social order. I believe in the sacredness of a promise that a man's word should be as good as his bond. That character, not wealth or power or position, is of supreme worth. I believe that the rendering of useful service is a common duty of mankind, and that only in the purifying fire of sacrifice is the gross selfishness consumed, and the greatness of the human soul set free. That right can and will triumph over might. John D. Rockefeller. Remember, a person who cannot lead and will not follow invariably is a troublemaker. According to Ted Turner, either lead, follow, or get out of the way. Dear friends, all of you are listening very carefully. All of you listeners are the judges. If someone is speaking, he is playing the role of a lawyer. So dear friends, after judging, observing, evaluating, examining, you will reach at the height of conclusion how we can regenerate, recreate and reoperate our nation and society. Should be adopted. Identify your present source of power. Identify 3 behavior patterns that you should like to adopt in order to assume a leadership role. Identify your motivation to be a leader. Is it to satisfy ego or some society? That is what distinguishes between a leader and a misleader. Self-evaluation is must. Dear friends, today the biggest problem in politics is corruption. Parasites in the system. According to Roman Roland, France fell because there was corruption without indignation. According to an ancient saying, the longer one waits to fight evil, the harder it is to defeat it. Once, in spite of repeated warnings from his neighbors, a man planted a thorny bush in the middle of a path. As the bush grew larger, it started hurting the passerby. Every time someone asked the man to remove the bush, he postponed it for another day. Then one day he was himself wounded by a thorn and started bleeding. Now he wanted to get rid of the bush, but he was helpless. It had become too large for him to pull it out. As this story indicates, evil, if not destroyed at the outset, keeps growing stronger even as you become weaker in comparison. The story of the thorny bush is like a parable for the growth of corruption in a society. Like the thorny bush, someone somewhere is responsible for planting the seed of corruption. As citizens, most of like the man in the story, Ignore the little sapling of corruption until it becomes a big thorny bush that endangers our well-being, one that we are helpless against. Unless we destroy the seed of evil, it will destroy us. What is corruption? Corruption is the evil desire to exploit the unfortunate, the defenseless, and the vulnerable. The heartless intensity of corruption is often the result of devious planning. In a corrupt society, laws are like spider webs that catch the weak and poor, but can be destroyed by the rich and the powerful. Corruption, unchecked, is like cancer that will eventually eat out the social order from within. Often the sheer scale and magnitude of the problem encourages superficial minds to be satisfied with the notion that corruption has and will always be with us. People justify its presence as a global phenomenon. No society has ever attained 24-carat purity in honesty and integrity. But how can we ignore the difference between 22-carat and 8-carat purity? It's corruption. Then the exception or the rule. In corrupt governments, positions are created for men, whereas in good governments, men are chosen for positions that exist. Once a minister, politician from a corrupt third world country went abroad on a personal invitation from a minister from another nation. He was surprised at the extravagant red carpet welcome. After a while, he asked his host how he managed to extend such an expensive reception without any state sponsorship. The man took him to the window and pointing out to river said, "Do you see that river?" And the answer was yes. "Do you see that bridge on the river?" And the answer was again yes. The minister said 10%. Then the next year, the minister from third world country invited his counterpart to his own country and chew. And even grandeur welcome. The man, though flattered, was surprised and asked him how he could manage such opulence without support from the state. The minister smiled and took his perplexed friend to the window and asked, "Can you see that river?" And the answer he got was yes. Then he asked, "Do you see the bridge on the river?" And the answer was no. The minister said, 100% in corrupt societies, when a person sees inhuman treatment, he sometimes wonders if this world was created by God or the devil, when God was not looking. Corrupt democracy means that gangsters run the country in uniform and terrorize the honest citizens. A corrupt government is nothing less than organized crime. Whenever a corrupt government official, "I am from the government and I am here to help," you know you have a problem on your hands. Officials are supposed to be the servants of the public, but their way of functioning suggests that the public has become the servant of the corrupt. The preservation of a government depends on the faithful discharge of duties by its citizens. If citizens neglect their duties and place unprincipled man in office, the government will inevitably become corrupt. In a corrupt system, laws are made for self-interest, not public interest. And most importantly, corrupt and incompetent men will get appointed to positions of power. Public revenues are squandered. The rights of citizens violated and ignored. When the government itself breaks the law, it breeds general contempt for law in society. With degradation of values, ill-gotten wealth become the criteria of status and respect. We are not talking here of piecemeal corruption, but of entire system that becomes corrupt and affects all areas of a citizen's lives. When corruption becomes a way of life, freedom loses its meaning. A society succumbs when corruption attains epidemic proportions. Honorable living is shattered. It is important to recognize that corruption thrives because of a sleepy conscience. There was a man who thought that if he stole a little wheat from different farms, the other farmers would not notice it, while he would have a big pile of wheat for himself. One night he went to the farms and asked his daughter to stand guard while he went stealing. As he was stealing from the first farm, his daughter shouted, "Dad, someone is watching you." He came running out, but saw no one there. He then went to the second farm to steal some more wheat. Again, his daughter called, "Dad, someone is watching you." He came out running, but again he saw no one there. Then he went to the third farm. For the third time, his daughter cried, "Dad, someone is watching you." As before, he came running back, but saw no one again. This time, he got angry. "Why do you keep shouting that someone is watching me when there is no one here?" His daughter replied, "Dad, there is someone who is always watching you from above, and that is God." God is often another name for one's conscience. It is one's only guardian in moments of moral crisis. It is the inner voice which guides us in the right direction. Honest, a sleepy conscience is a source of great happiness and comfort. People who betray others actually betray their conscience first. When a person betrays his conscience may be silent, but it is never secure. The greatest moral decision which takes place under the guise of virtue. Societies like these resemble rotten fruit which surely have worms inside. George Bernard Shaw said, "Democracy substitutes election by the incompetent many for appointment by the corrupt few." The word commissioner acquires a special meaning in a corrupt society. It's evident that if a commissioner takes commission on every safety certificate that he grants, a housing commissioner takes commission on every house that is built. The income tax commissioner takes a commission on every income. Commissioner in corrupt societies live on commissions. No wonder in such societies anyone who who takes commission is called a commissioner. Gradual degeneration. What happened to the level? The degeneration of a society is not surprising when corruption becomes acceptable and no stigma is attached to a corrupt person. Social stigmatization of the corrupt in the past served a useful purpose. It quarantined such people from the rest of the society to ensure its moral good health. People didn't want to socialize with the corrupt, nor did they want their children married into families that were corrupt, as the level was looked down upon. But today, with the general degradation of values, we justify our acceptance of corrupt practices by saying, you have to be practical. Corruption is not an end, but a means to an end. The end being wealth, power, and authority. A corrupt country runs like a bus, where half the passengers are trying to drive the bus and the other half are trying to collect the fare. The link between crime and corruption is deep-seated. Extortion, treachery, murder, plunder, selling of public offices, embezzlement become a part of daily life. Corruption is the biggest obstacle in fighting crime. Corruption can be compared to terrorism. Its victims don't bear names. Acts of corruption are unaddressed letters directed to whom it may concern. What is the source of corruption? Source of corruption are easily seen by all. Bad laws, bad men. Nothing destroys respect for the government more than having laws in place which cannot be enforced. Bad laws are responsible for corrupt practices because, after all, it is they who create bad laws. In a society, there are people of high moral values. High moral values, low moral values. A small percentage of people, no matter how bad the ways, no matter how bad the laws are, practice ethical behavior. The reverse is also true. A similar percentage would cheat no matter how good the laws are. The majority rely on the system to give them direction. In a good system, a corrupt person has a hard time, whereas in a corrupt system, an honest person has a hard time. Corruption, though can never be eliminated, can be minimized. The corrupt, regardless of where they are, find various ways to corrupt the system. There was once a king who had a corrupt minister, a man who would make corrupt gains regardless of his postings. When the king became aware of his activities, he thought of an infallible solution and posted the minister by the ocean to count the ways, thinking that corruption would cease. He didn't, however, realize the ingenuity of the corrupt minister. The minister started collecting money from the boatmen and the steamers on the pretext that they were obstructing and interfering with his official duties by disturbing the waves. When people who lack moral values obtain positions of power, they endanger society. That is when corruption becomes rampant. Causes of corruption: need or greed, scarcity. Corruption can result from scarcity of essential goods where demand is high and supply is low. This is imbalanced function of demand and supply may be real or artificially created for ulterior gains. Abject poverty for the sake of survival. A person has to resort to corrupt practices, acquire wealth to meet the objectives of luxurious living. People resort to corruption. Wealth attained by foul means helps people achieve high positions in a corrupt society, and they are actually looked up to when crime starts to pay, as it does in a corrupt society. It is even a more respectable name. The corrupt are a part of the human race with a human face, lacking in a humanity. Forms of corruption: gifts. An official accepting gifts given with the objective of to give undue advantage to the giver. Extortion. The demanding of gifts or money by an official is extortion. The official is saying, unless you pay me, I'll make your life hell. Embezzlement, chiffoning of funds, nepotism, where appointment of relatives are made regardless of their merit to a corrupt person. Einstein's theory of relativity is getting their relatives on the payroll regardless of its form. Corruption involves subordination of public interest to private gain, breach of trust, secrecy, lack of transparency, violation of duty and public welfare, deception, disregard of national welfare. Consequences of corruption. Corruption devastates smooth administration. Corruption is the cause of brain drain. The morale of the nation and its citizens is adversely affected. Corruption has snowballing effect. When corruption grows, so does crime. Corruption does not let its citizens either live or die with dignity. Corruption leads to lack of humanity and compassion. How do we fight corruption? Concerned citizens must come into decision-making positions and pledge their commitment to eliminate corruption and injustice. Create strong and honest leadership who will guide the citizens and the nation through this process. Check the lure of ease, money and power to a strong judiciary. Just feel the absolute need to work towards enhancing their moral character and destroying the evil influences of corruption from the roots. Form and support honest pressure groups to bring transparency and accountability into the system. Create a national movement against corruption by educating citizens of their social obligations. In the struggle for humanity, as opposition will come from vested interest. Every time We look at our kids. We need to ask, will they be its next victims? The fight against corruption is a struggle for survival between the corrupt and the patriotic. Strong public opinion needs to be created against this social disease. Good citizens have to come out of their apathy and become intolerant of corruption. History stands witness to the fact that those who cut their country's throat end up cutting their own. Most individuals become part of the corrupt system. Corruption becomes a culture, and that culture is best described as vulture culture. It is a dog-eat-dog situation. When people have been abused at some point in their lives, then they too learn abuse when they get into position of power. The culture in any society goes top down and never bottom up. A small act of corruption usually triggers off a chain reaction. It creates an economic problem, and that creates further corruption. Slowly, corruption becomes not only a part of itself. Real problems arise when corruption seeps into the working of the government and the hearts of the people. A nation's vulnerability, coupled with its citizens' complaints, brings the situation to a point of no return. Corruption begets still more corruption, and the cycle goes on endlessly. It generates a whole new breed of people called touts, contact men, go-betweens, who thrive on victimizing and extortion, sycophancy and yeshmanship, then become an integral part of culture. Jellyfish sometimes swallows a snail. The snail lies inside the jellyfish. To sustain itself, the snail starts eating the jellyfish from inside and keeps growing. A day comes when it consumes the entire jellyfish, and the jellyfish is no more. Corruption does the same thing to a nation. No more. Dear friends, adopt action plan. Resolve the fight against corruption. Identify 3 areas of your life where corruption is hurting the system. Starting generating public opinion through a social group to clean the system. Through self-evaluation it is possible. Teaching honor, influence eternity. Your youth does not form 100% of the population, but they definitely form 100% of the future of society. The youth of a country are the leaders of tomorrow. The future judges, the generals, the politicians and the doctors are sitting in the school and colleges of today. The future of the nation depends on their knowledge, their character, skill, and their preparedness or lack of it. An honorable nation emerges when citizens build their character. It is said that the first lessons in character building begin at kindergarten. To me, it starts even earlier, not when a child is born, but 100 years before. Why? Because attitude and values are genetic. They go from one generation to the next. There was an elderly person planting some acorns. A man passing by asked, "Old man, look at your age. Do you think you will live long enough to see the oak trees?" And the man replied, "All the trees that have given me shade and fruits, did I plant all of them? There are people coming behind me too. Aren't we custodians of the next generation? The nation behaves responsibly when it treats the assets of the nation in trust for the next generation. Habits contracted at a young age are generally permanent and influence conduct throughout the life. If during the formative years time is misspent, the chances are that it has been lost forever. There is no compensation for the time lost in one's youth. The debate in any community caste with crime today is not the punishment of criminals, but the prevention of the young from being trained in crime. In many societies, the young person of today faces an identity crisis, evident through self-doubt and despair. His despondency reflects the moral and ethical void at the heart of society. We need to realize that young minds are more impressionable than mature minds. If we cannot prepare the future for our youth, but we can certainly prepare our youth for the future. This is where caring parents, teachers, and custodians of society need to get involved. It is without doubt important for children to get good academic training. But the for real success, according to colleague Powell, the greatest gift my parents gave to me were their unconditional love and a set of values. Values that they lived with and didn't just lecture about. Values that included an understanding of the simple difference between right and wrong, a belief in God, the importance of hard work and education, self-respect, and a belief in America, accountability and direction. Generally, it is assumed that parents have unconditional love for their children. I wonder what unconditional love means. Does it apply to all relationships or only parent-child? Or are there no exceptions? Does it mean a spouse should accept infidelity or get beaten up? Unconditionality. Does unconditional love mean that we let one family member who is a drug addict sacrifice the interest of the entire family? The way I see it, if one partner becomes sick or disabled, the other spouse has not only made a commitment to look after that person, but also that he or she would not look for physical and emotional gratification outside marriage, because that would be dishonorable. The word commitment and unconditional have a common meaning which says, I will stand by you no matter what. It doesn't say, I will stand by you only in good times or till I find a better one. Unconditional love implies sacrifice. At the same time, it makes allowance for imperfections, as none of us is perfect. We need to accept each other with the good and bad. If a loved one goes off track, our responsibility is to bring him on track. However, in spite of the best efforts, if he doesn't come on track for whatever reasons, and if the issue is value-based, one needs to re-evaluate the relationship. It is not to see parents sacrifice their needs in order to meet their children's wants. However, being accepting does not relieve a parent of their responsibility to make their children accountable for their behavior. Because children do not always heed the right advice, does not absolve parents of their responsibilities. Parents who are afraid to put their foot down usually have children who step on their toys. Some parents bring their children up while others let them down. The best security blanket that parents can provide to a child is in the form of role models who respect each other. The breakdown of the values in the family amounts to a breakdown in the family of the youth. The young generation is the first thing that comes to our minds when we think of a breakdown of values. We say, look at the younger generation and their values. We use the term delinquent teenagers for them. The question we need to ask is, who is delinquent? Are they or are we? And more importantly, who is to be blamed? The following point clarifies as to who is delinquent, ready and eager to act. The youth today have become synonymous with impatience. They need guidance, or if left directionless, their youth becomes a blunder, their manhood a struggle, and their old age one of regret. Once, since lessons of good values transcend generations, when you inculcate good values in your children, you are really teaching good values to your grandchildren also. Who is to be blamed? Who is to be blamed? We read it in the papers and hear it on the air of killing and stealing and crime anywhere, everywhere. We sigh and we say as we notice the trend, this young generation will it end. But can we be sure that it's their fault alone? Are we less guilty who place in their way too many things that lead them astray? Too much money, too much idle time, too many movies of passion and crime, too many books not fit to be read, too much evil in what they hear said, too many children encouraged to roam, too many parents who won't stay home. Kids don't make the books. They don't paint the pictures of gangsters and truths. They don't make the liquor. They don't run the bars. They don't change the laws. And they don't make the cars. They don't make the drugs that muddle the brain. That's all done by older folks, eager for gain. Delinquent teenager, oh how we condemn the sins of the nation and blame it on them. Instead of placing blame, let's fix the cause. And remember as we pause, that's in so many causes, that so many cases it's said that it's sad, but it is true. The title delinquent fits older folks too. The wife of one American president and the mother of another. Abigail Adams was a prodigious letter writer in her day. In the following letter written to her son, John Quincy, in the winter of 1779 to 80, she makes her conviction uncompromisingly clear. My dear John, improve your understanding for acquiring useful knowledge and virtue, such as will render you an ornament in society, an honor to your country, and a blessing to your parents. Great learning and superior abilities, should you ever possess them, will be of little value and small estimation unless virtue, honor, truth and integrity are added to them. Adhere to those religious sentiments and principles which are early instilled into your mind, and remember that you are accountable to your Maker for all your words and actions. Let you to attend constantly and steadfastly to the precepts and instructions of your fathers, as you value the happiness of your mother and your own welfare. I had much rather you should have found your grave in the ocean you have crossed, or any ultimately death throw you in your infant years, rather than see you an immoral, profligate, or a graceless child. So, great leaders in American history by Rebecca Price, Jenny, Pennsylvania, Horizon Books, 2000, page number 54. Discipline doesn't break a child's spirit, but lack of it breaks a parent's heart. It is a parent's duty towards society to make his child a valuable member of that society. Paul Harris, whose vision of Rotary shines today over 150 countries and inspires the hearts of over 1 million Rotarians globally, credits his grandparents for instilling in him the values that eventually became the foundation of Rotary. This only shows that the ripple effect of good parenting is limitless. Their influence affects eternity. Boundaries or bondage. A parent ought to be able to distinguish between boundaries and bondage. Call them rules or limits. Good ones are essential to serve a purpose and are an expression of a loving concern. It is a parental duty to see that children experience the true consequences of their conduct. Growing up honorably is difficult for a child who enough importance. Parents who do not expect proper behavior from their child and do not discipline him, actually do not respect him enough to teach him honorable living. In our current so-called free or liberal culture and permissive atmosphere, the idea that a person ought to be accountable for his behavior may seem old-fashioned. If a young child sticks out his tongue or uses profanity and a parent casually or approvingly ignores the insult or addresses it lightly, can they claim to have a fine child? The unspoken protection amounts to an encouraging of aggression. Children obey parents, but wherever parents' values are weak, the parents obey their children. A problem child reveals problem parents. Indisciplined children, when young may disturb your sleep, what? When grown up, they can disturb your life. Discipline is an act of love. Education, character or academics. There are two kinds of education. One that helps you make a living and one that makes your life. The real end of any education is to build character and help develop good citizens of tomorrow. To know how to read is not as important as to know what to read. Education is the progressive discovery of one's ignorance. Learning how to learn is the basis of education. It directs our choice between right and wrong. It is a good system of education which inculcates the principles of humanity. Education is the soul of society. It teaches us to respond to tradition by either rejecting it or accepting it slavishly. Education teaches us the rules and exceptions and thus influences the thinking of the future generations. Nature brings out the distinction between man and brute. And education brings out the difference between one man and another. In order to make people protect their rights and responsibilities, mass education needs to be prioritized. It is education which makes people easy to lead but hard to drive, easy to govern but hard to enslave. To them, freedom takes priority over privilege or security. To them, freedom takes priority over privilege or security. They understand that a society can never be free till all the principles of freedom have been adopted. Character building always remains the prime purpose of education. This helps people to live prosperous, just, and dignified lives. This process, though, has two steps: self-education and self-development, which is an individual development; societal development, collective development of all individuals in a society. Our children have the right to expect from society fairness, justice and equal opportunity, to utilize one's abilities as each citizen chooses. A system of education that gives each citizen a sense of social responsibility. These goals are achievable. All it takes is commitment to education. Countries are not built by bricks, but by minds. If you find education expensive, you ought to try ignorance. You will see for yourself which is more expensive. Which is more expensive? What is the essence of an educated person? William Arthur Ward of Texas, Wellesley University identifies the following 10 hallmarks of an educated person. The 10 hallmarks of an educated person. One is, educated person think clearly and logically, live honorably and courageously, give willingly and generously, and forgive lovingly and graciously. Two is, they are keenly aware that responsibilities have higher priorities than privileges, that freedom is more precious than security. Three is, they realize that their learning is never complete, that life is a never-ending process of growth. Four is, they understand that simplicity is the essence of beauty and that personal integrity is the cornerstone of character. Five is, they understand that great ideas are more permanent than great wealth, that excellent examples teach more than polished phrases. Six is, they recognize that curiosity is the wick in the candle of learning And that wonder is the flame that lights the torch of adventure and achievement. 7 is, they have developed inner reservoirs of thankfulness and learned creative ways of expressing their gratitude to their Creator and their fellow humans. 8 is, they welcome, respect and enjoy new challenges, different cultures, unusual customs and opposing opinions. 9 is, educated persons are those who thirst for additional knowledge, hunger for more truth, and earn for increased wisdom. 10 is, they recognize their limitations but focus on the possibilities. They appreciate their uniqueness but celebrate their oneness with all humanity. William Arthur Ward. The reason why many parents and teachers no longer inspire the younger generation is that they are themselves going the wrong way, embracing a culture of self-gratification by declaring it's my life. A teacher affects eternity. In ancient India, a student would live with his teacher as a member of his family. A teacher can be a mother, a schoolmaster, or a principal. Anyone who imparts education is a teacher. If genius is the goal in the mind, then a great teacher is like the miner who works. Teachers are the makers of history. Honor in marriage, a preparation for life. Marriage is usually referred to as holy matrimony, acknowledging that the relationship is sacred. Marriage is not just a contact between two people. It is a sacred covenant. Today's society is constantly redefining morality and dragging it gradually towards permissiveness, self-centeredness, and clubbing everything under the umbrella of being non-judgmental in society. The Bible distinguished between holy and unholy sex. Holy sex is that which takes place between the husband and wife in fulfillment of their marital relationship. Unholy sex is everything else. Sexuality and obligation are ultimately. Sexuality and obligation are intimately connected. Adultery comes from the term adulterate, which means to contaminate or to make impure. Adultery is also a form of theft. Adultery affects the stability of the family, undermining the trust of husband and wife, threatening the integrity of the family unit. According to a 1994 University of Michigan study, infidelity is indeed the primary cause of divorce. Dr. Frank Pittman, an international renowned expert on sexuality and marriage, states that in his 37 years of experience as a therapist, he has encountered only 2 cases of first marriages ending in divorce in which adultery was not involved. According to Dr. Lena Stanley, author of a book on marital triangles of those who break up their marriage to marry someone else, 80% are sorry later. Having an affair is an invitation to an awful load of pain and tragedy. Adapted from the 10 Commandments. Schlesinger, Harper Collins Publishers, inclusive, 10 East 53rd Street, New York, NY 10022. Some of the greatest leaders in the world not only inherited their values from their parents, but felt a very strong obligation to impart them to the next generation. Former President of the USA, Mr. Ronald Reagan, to his son at the time of the latter's marriage, dear Mike, you are heard all the jokes that have been rousted around by all the unhappy marrieds and cynics. Now, in case no one has suggested it, there is another viewpoint. You have entered into the most meaningful relationship there is in all human life. It can be whatever you decide to make it. Some men feel their masculinity can only be proven if they play out in their own life all the local room stories, smugly confident that what a wife doesn't know won't hurt her. The truth is, somehow, way down inside, without her ever finding lipstick on the collar or catching a man in the flimsy excuse of where he was still there till 3 a.m. A wife does know. And with that, knowing some of the magic of this relationship disappears. There are more men gripping about marriage who kicked the whole thing away themselves than there can ever be wives deserving of blame. There is an old law of physics that you can only get out of a thing as much as you put in it. The man who puts into the marriage only half of that he will get that out. Sure, there will be moments when you will see someone or think back on an earlier time and you will be challenged to see if you can still make the grade. But let me tell you how really great is the challenge of proving your masculinity and charm with one woman for the rest of your family. Any man can find a twerp here and there who will go along with cheating, and it doesn't take all that much manhood. It does take quite a man to remain attractive and to be loved by a woman who has heard him snore. See, and wash his dirty underwear. Do that and keep her still feeling a warm glow, and you will know some very beautiful music. If you truly love a girl, you shouldn't ever want her to feel when she sees you greet a secretary or a girl. You both know that humiliation of wondering if she was someone who caused you to be late coming home. Nor should you want any other woman to be able to meet your wife and know she was smiling behind her eyes as she looked at her. The woman you love, remembering this was the woman you rejected even momentarily for her favors. Right? You know better than many other. You know better than many what it can do to others. Now you have a chance to make it come out the way it should. There is no greater happiness for a man than approaching a door at the end of a day, knowing someone on the other side of that door is waiting for the sound of his footsteps. Saying of the dead. Yes, you will never get in trouble if you say, I love you at least once a day. Acceptance of values results from exposure to what is acceptable in society. One night stands and purely physically relationships degrade the sanctity of love and relationship. Animals do not have sacred relationships. They engage in instinctive procreations. The feeling of satisfaction or shame comes from the sanctity of the relationship. Thank you.